Yeah. Time is 4:31 PM. And this is a Personnel and Ordinance Committee meeting of the town of Silverton. We have all trustees present. Trustee Gardner, trustee Schnicker, Mayor Pro Tem Harper, and staff present is Lucy and first up, we have the marijuana code amendment review, and Clayton, we'll let you kick that off. If you're ready.
Trying. There we go. Hello all, how is everyone doing today?
Good. Thanks. Yeah.
So I wanted to be here to discuss any questions you might have with the marijuana code. This was an upgrade from the previous code, which had obsolete statutory references and obsolete a bunch of obsolete rules and language because of the transfer of the medical and recreational marijuana codes to the single marijuana code section. And so you'll see at the outset, I just kind of describe procedurally why we're doing this and why we're making the amendment to keep up with current statute, which is going to be that Title 44 statute. I did my best because of the new code is very complex and there's lots of ins and outs, and I had to make a couple assumptions, but I did my best to make this as simple as possible. The last code that I brought and drafted was it was too complicated, and there's a lot more questions than necessary because it was maybe just a little unnecessarily lengthy and verbose. And so what I tried to do was take out anything that I didn't think would affect Silverton now for sure, but then trying to also foresee a little bit into the future as Silverton grows and make sure that we at least included gave it some potential for growth so that you could grow into it and or make easy changes without having to change massive portions of the ordinance. If you look at the only real direction that I received was that you guys wanted to keep your regulated marijuana establishments to 3. I also defined regulated marijuana establishments just as medical and retail. What I did, a major assumption I made in this is that you were not going to be welcoming or allowing marijuana manufacturing within the town limits, meaning you weren't going to have any cannabis grows or any cannabis food or gummy or other manufacturing type facilities using cannabis. A lot of times within a town, especially the size of Silverton, if you have a marijuana grow and or a manufacturing establishment there, it smells, and it'll smell, the whole town will smell like marijuana. And so a lot of small towns have done is said, fine, we don't want to miss out on necessarily the revenue and the taxes that can come along with a good marijuana store, but we do not want to be manufacturing marijuana products within town limits. And that was a major assumption I made, and it probably cut out about 20 pages of ordinance, because once you get into that level, it becomes very complicated, especially with inspections, meeting state requirements. It becomes very expensive, and it's just what I would see as an unnecessary burden. And so I had spoken with staff and gotten the direction to make this as simple as possible. And that's why you're only seeing the stores versus like the multiple other different establishments that could be addressed, that we're simply not going to address, and just go with the requirements of having any marijuana shops, meaning medical and or recreational or retail, and we're not separating them. And we're allowing the medical and the retail to combine if necessary. Again, this saves a lot of time and labor for the town. It also saves a lot of rent for this ordinance by just defining regulated marijuana establishments as containing both those two definitional type of stores within the statute itself. Is there any questions before I move on?
Not about that. I have questions about some of the other things, but
Is the Personnel and Ordinance Committee in agreement that that's how you guys want to see this? Is anybody surprised and or shocked that, we're not contemplating manufacturing facilities or other type of establishments?
no.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that I made a good assumption there. So obviously this is going to be licensed and controlled just like a business license would. One thing to keep in mind is you're going to be allowing, under this code, at least you'd be allowing dual licenses, which means that it can operate. A marijuana establishment can operate both types, medical and recreational, under a permit, and that would allow one shop to have like a medical side and a retail side. It's a lot more difficult to do the medical, and a lot of people just stay away from it. What I think you're going to see is people coming in for retail. It limits the stores in town to 3, so that's a really important piece of this. If you guys wanted to limit it, the permits more or allow more, you would need to change or ask to change section 6480. The operational limitations are all very, I don't say boilerplate, but I was very heavy on ventilation and inspections, so that you guys could control how the marijuana establishments were going to be inspected. You also have, marijuana establishments are also taxable, so there is marijuana sales tax that you can impose up to a certain amount, and so that could be a income generator for the town as well, and that's contemplated in here as well if you decide to do that. I took out a lot of the disclaimers and a lot of like the things that you would have found in the Colorado codified regulations, because they're already there. And what I did was I just referred to that. I referred to the CCR as a marijuana establishment, you're expected to follow the CCR regulation versus what the original draft of this, which I had included most of the required CCR language in the ordinance itself. And so I took that out in order, again, to make this more, to streamline this a little bit. So as we go down, you're going to see that there's also location restrictions. Again, these are very standard, but these are something that are flexible. So if the board looks at this and says, wait a minute, based on the way the town is, platted, I think that these, like the 300 feet or 150 foot buffer zones need to be increased or decreased or whatever the case may be. So you're going to want to look at 6.4, 100 and maybe have brief discussion on that. I made it such that I went with a very standard buffer zones, 300 feet from schools and drug treatment facilities and daycare, and then 150 feet from churches, residential zones, and each other.
Yeah, I do have a question on that, and a comment. I know we talked about it in depth last meeting a few months ago, but now with the dispensary that was fairly close to the school, it's not there anymore. And the one that's currently there is 0.2 miles, which is a little over 1,000 feet from the school. And I would strongly recommend moving from 300 feet to 1,000 feet. It'll set a better precedent for anyone else coming in. And also the standard around Colorado State is 1,000 feet from a school. So I would not want to be more lenient than that.
is the committee directing me to make that change?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to our previous conversation on this issue, and I wouldn't say we had total consensus, but I think there was general agreement that we would be interested in greater than 1,000 feet. But I think the argument that puts us in line with state statute is a pretty strong one, which I agree with.
Yeah, and then it just like, consistency across with the tobacco retail license as well. And it wouldn't affect a current retailer. I think previously too, we were like, oh, there's one that is fairly close to the school and we didn't want to do anything with them. But now that there's only one here, we can set our own precedents and make it 1,000 feet. I think that's just, that's my opinion.
Do you want the 300 feet to remain for alcohol, drug licensed daycare facilities, or do you want it from 1,000 feet from any school, alcohol, drug facility, or licensed daycare facility?
I would say for all
All of it?
daycare is still, yeah.
Okay. I can make that change.
Okay.
So, we made it any unlawful act to not only be a criminal violation, also be a nuisance, and that's something to do that really helps, especially when we're dealing with like ventilation stuff. If they're not properly ventilated, we can charge it as a nuisance, and that way we're not necessarily stuck with the criminal prosecution. We can go forward with a civil prosecution, which is a lot less lighter burden for the town to enforce, as well as fines, etc. We included the licensing procedure. Again, I had to make a lot of assumptions, but I wanted to just make it simple as possible. I didn't get into the weeds on what would be required, but as you see for the application requirements, it's a half a page. But it does include things that like business plan, operational plan, compliance plans, etc., without getting into the weeds of what that means. Those are described in the CCRs, and anybody looking to start a business like this, I think you need to rely on their expertise to come forward with something that meets the standard, and rather than trying to hash out every little plan. If the person has their business model and an operational plan and a compliance plan that's in accordance with the state, then the state will grant them their license dependent on local authorities. So they need a state license already, and so a lot of this we can fall back on their application to the state to meet these minimum requirements without having to get too far in the weeds in our own ordinance. We are requiring that that it can only be in certain residential, or certain mixed use areas. So it can only be an MU1 or C2 commercial, and within those zones they have to meet the land use code requirements. A lot of this is just procedural, how to process what we're going to do, the right to public hearings, and then license findings. The board, some of the members of the board have gone through this recently with appealing and or suspending permits and all that goes into that with public hearings. And so you want to make sure that that's included in the ordinance, which it is. And we kind of outline how to do that. And then we address change of licenses and then suspensions and revocations, basic enforcement. And that will bring us close to the end of the document that is here for your discussion. So if I'm here to just answer any questions you may have, I'll do another sweep of this after and make any changes you'd like, and make sure everything that is in here has been properly cross-referenced again before it goes up to the BOT for approval. But I think it's important that that you guys like it and approve it.
Thank you, Clayton.
Yes.
I do have one more question on, the transfers, license transfers,
Mhm.
6/4, 240, 250. So is that saying that if someone currently has a license and moves locations, they can transfer, but if there's a new business owner, they can't? Or can you explain that to me a little bit? I'm just a little confused if it's non-transferable or.
So licenses don't transfer between people or entities.
Okay,
But they can transfer. They transfer.
Is it-
Premises, yeah, subject to prior application and approval by authority. So what this is basically saying is, so like if you look at 240, like you can't transfer or sign licenses. And it's only valid for like the actual entity or the person that it's specifically identified in the license, because you go through the background check, they have the state license and all that. An entire, like, but somebody else can come in and buy the entire business, right? Like basically, and then they would have to go through they would have to go through the process.
Right,
Like
you'd have to
basic-
come before the authority and it's like similar.
They'd have to go, yeah,
Application.
basically go through the process of the purchase, and you guys would have to approve that. So that
Okay.
it can't, it basically what it's saying, it can't be a private transaction.
but it can
And
be transferable, that's what it's saying?
You're allowed, yeah, but if you want it to
We
be,
can
yeah.
decide,
We
or
just-
at the local licensing authority can decide.
It would have to be the approval authority, and I was also directed, and brings up a good point too, is I was also directed to have whoever your municipal judge is as the approval authority.
Okay. Okay. I guess I am just wondering too. Just as I do work at public health and I look at license and marijuana and tobacco. And a lot of times they're not transferable so that the new owner can go through the process and learn the regulations of the local authority and everything. So
they would still have to get their license through the state anyway.
okay, so
It wouldn't just they wouldn't be able to come to us first and say, we want their marijuana license.
Right.
They would have to get their license through the state.
And they'd have to apply through,
Yeah.
they'd have to go through the application process that in our local application process. So basically, this is more not necessarily like a license transfer. What it's saying is like, you can buy a permit basically, like, because we're limiting 3 permits. What we're saying is like, okay, if we're maxed out and somebody wants to sell their business, somebody else can buy the business, but they have to go through our application process.
Got it.
To get versus like, okay, this person, like basically what would happen is you'd get to 3 permits and it would stifle local business, because those people would not be able to sell the business. They'd have to basically just walk away from it. And then that permit would be up for grabs for whoever was the next applicant, and it just gets messy. And so you want to allow a mechanism, at least in my opinion, to transfer those permits, but still make the person go through your application process. And so that's what that's trying to make sense.
That
You
makes
see
a lot
there,
of sense. Yeah.
yeah, it says subject, it's really kind of, it's not that explicit, but it does say subject to prior application too, and approval by the authority. And it's basically just like, yeah, look, you can do this license transfer, and this is how it's allowed. Like the other person has to go through the application process. But you can basically buy a permit if the permits are maxed out. So it becomes it becomes a more of an appealing prospect if and when Silverton had 3 retail establishments and somebody wanted to sell.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. I was just a little confused. Perfect. Yeah, everything else looks good to me. Anyone else?
Oh, this is exactly what we discussed. Clayton, I love what you put together. I think it's great.
Perfect. Thanks for working on this, Clayton.
Yeah. My pleasure. Sorry that the first one was, um, wasn't what you were looking for.
This is great.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So is it just direction to bring it to the board now? Is that right? This
After your edits, yeah.
after, okay, perfect.
Yep,
So you just-
the only edit I see is the 1,000 feet. Am I missing something?
No, I think that was it.
That's about it, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then I do have to. There are two other changes I'm gonna make, and they're just references to other sections that are highlighted here that go nowhere. And so that's what I'm talking about. I will cross-reference this again and make sure that if I refer to a paragraph within this document, that the paragraph actually exists. And all that. So there's still like a couple mistakes here, but I didn't want perfection to get in the way of good and presentable, because I knew you guys really wanted to see this. And so, but I will be certain before this goes to the BOT to that it will be, super clean.
Great, wonderful.
Wait, and I can give you some information too on the two comments that you left on here for the retail marijuana sales tax amount and the form of payment. I can give you that information too, so you.
Great. Yeah, I just didn't want the town to miss out on that revenue.
Yeah, we do have a 5% sales tax that we did with the vote through Tabor when the last current board was elected.
Well done. Well done. Okay, perfect. Okay, if you have no other questions, then I'm gonna pop off. Did you guys need me for anything else?
I don't think so.
Sir.
Thank you, Clayton.
Thanks guys.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
All right.
You're up, Lucy. Okay, next up, the Silverton Creative District is seeking to partner with the town and San Juan Development Association to start a public art program with the goal of bringing more public art to Silverton. And they will do this by identifying appropriate sites for installation, and these sites will be pre-approved by the Board of Trustees, setting project themes, budgets, establishing materials, and creating community engagement plans to kind of get ready for artwork, applying for and securing grant funding, and creating the artist calls and reviewing the proposals using a scoring criteria, as well as the Secretary of the Interior standards for treatment of historic properties when appropriate. The proposal also includes the formation of a public art committee to review, score, and decide on by the art. And right now, the town does not have any standards for artwork. And that was intentional when we did the code update. This is pretty common for towns to have an independent or a town-supported art committee, which is essentially what the Creative District is proposing here to kind of review and decide on public art. Town staff from the planning department, myself, would serve on the committee to keep communication between the board and the committee. And that's really the only budget impact here. The proposal is in line with the master plan priorities of supporting public art installations and ensuring that public art reflects Silverton's native culture and has a multicultural appeal. If the board wanted to move forward with this, the next steps would be to bring the program guidelines and scoring rubric to the board for any comments, and then to establish the partnership with the town and the Public Art Committee by a resolution. And then to go through the process of kind of pre-approving a site inventory for the public art. And we have Lisa and Sarah here. Then they can provide a better overview of the program or answer any questions if you would like them to.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a wonderful idea. I'm very excited. I guess I have a question, and it might be more of a personal project that we've been working on for public health. This summer, we started a mural to raise mental health awareness linked to substance use. And we spoke to Gloria, and she said the site would be had in Memorial Park was fine, it was okay. So now with this, the project, like with the weather and time constraints, it might not happen till spring, the actual painting. So I guess I'm wondering, is that a project then that will have to go through these rubrics, or is that considered a predetermined site where we can just continue on?
That's a great question. I believe as the proposal's written right now that this program would kind of, would be used for the Silverton Creative District's art program only, unless they were open to kind of extending that to other programs, which is something we haven't talked about, but we could talk about that.
Well, we've talked about having collaborative relationships with other entities now. So Salem Development Association is a neutral partner in that they're managing the Main Street program here. So there's alignment there. You and I have had some conversation about the health department potentially being involved. We've talked with the Historical Society. So I think there is potential for multiple entities as well as residents to be involved in this committee and help in this process.
Okay.
And I mean, I think with what your project is right now, Amy, because of the fact that you're kind of already rolling and this is still in development, I don't know if it fall under this or not. But I would say that we're open to having collaborative partnerships with other agencies. And the other thing too, I think that is important to note is in site location, if you're talking about Memorial Park, you're outside of the historic overlay.
Yeah.
So there aren't the same type of restrictions that there might be on things that we're interested in doing right downtown in the heart of downtown.
Right.
And that's kind of the rationale behind, let's come up with a list of pre-approved sites so that when funding presents itself, we can just move and not have to go through a lengthy process to get things.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that helps frame it or clarify it at all, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just thinking about, again, with other organizations, if they have funding to do murals, a process that's streamlined and like easy for everyone to go through. But yeah, I guess that kind of answers it. So this would just be for like downtown area, what you're proposing here.
I think the framework that we're talking about right now is framework for downtown.
Yeah.
I envision that there could be other projects that are outside of downtown limits. One of the concepts that has been talked about a lot is connectivity between the powerhouse and downtown with the trail. And wouldn't it be awesome to have sculpture along that trail and make that kind of an art trail?
Yeah.
So I think there is potential to expand beyond. But again, we're just trying to figure out a way to be time efficient. Because, a lot of these grants will have a year or 2 year time limit that the funds need to be spent. So, want to be able to meet quickly when there is a project, that we've been funded for. So.
Yeah.
I think this is a great idea. What would the process be like to select the pre-approved sites? Like, do you have examples in mind?
You can photo the, store, size of, buildings and stores, in the downtown area with just big blank walls that, could be appropriate for something like that. We might look at town-owned spaces or facilities, depending upon whether or not, it's an appropriate use on that structure. But certainly various parks, Macy Park, and I think that'll be something we need to kind of get committee input on, and certainly have town input on where we think it's appropriate. My concern would be we select a site that's next to a vacant lot and then the owner decides to build on it, and now we've invested in public funding, that was grant funded on a project that is no longer visible. Or a private owner decides that they want to paint those people. Right, so there may be some considerations that we think about if we are working with a private property owner. It could be removable panels and things that could be moved to another site. Same thing goes for the storage structure. We can make that so that it's not fully impacting the building facade itself in a measurable way. So yeah, I think I would love to get feedback and input from people about where They'd like to see it. The idea is to make downtown more vibrant. But yeah, certainly there are lots of locations, lots of blank walls.
Even alleyways too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stand out just because I'm hiding behind this thing. A benefit of the Main Street program working with Lisa and the Creative District is we do have free technical services with our state of Colorado architect. And he has provided a ton of input on mural design and the actual integrity, the historic integrity. Because he's actually seen a lot of murals being installed and actually was extremely detrimental to the brick because there's a moisture barrier between the paint and the brick. So he's kind of here to provide his feedback and ensure that, you know, that historic integrity is still met and ensuring that these projects aren't destroying that. And just making sure that this is still the key focus is vibrancy in our downtown area and, you know, making placemaking areas where people can enjoy that space too. So.
Yeah, and just to echo that, like from a historic preservation standpoint, included in kind of the review criteria is making sure that they meet these specific Secretary of the Interior standards for treatment of buildings. So we're still upholding our historic preservation and kind of like our certified local government priorities in this.
And then, you know, this is just the first step. We bring it to the board. Would we see someone from the Historical Society being on the board, or would we, yeah, okay.
Yeah, if you look at the November.
Let me see.
Yeah, if you scroll down past the memo, the full proposal is there and it includes the list of all of the members.
Okay, good. Great, because I guess that's the only issue I can see with it, but yeah, I'm definitely for having art in town. I think it's fantastic. Yeah, I'd love to see it move forward.
Yeah, and especially with the structure in which like the planning department isn't taking on a huge amount of work, while still enabling us to bring more art into the community.
Yeah, and then since there'll be someone from the Historical Review Committee on the board, it won't have to go through the whole Historical Review Board.
Yes, and as our code currently
I was trying.
stands, public art on historic buildings goes through an administrative review, but staff doesn't have any standards to review anything by. So by kind of moving forward with kind of the public art program and the public art committee, they would be kind of establishing that criteria and then acting as an independent authority to review the artwork, which is kind of in line with best practices with what other communities do. But they would, you know, have sites pre-approved by the Board of Trustees. So the Historic Preservation Committee wouldn't really have involvement in this, but the Board of Trustees would be involved in selecting the sites.
Okay. Great. Is there anything else besides direction that we need to move forward from this today, or?
Yeah, so I think we're seeking direction to bring kind of this program to the Board of Trustees and then to bring kind of that partnership resolution to the board and then kind of direction to the Silverton Creative District to start working on a site inventory to bring to the board.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I would love to give direction and move forward.
Okay,
I would as well, yeah.
perfect. Jim, any thoughts?
Yeah, I love the price tag associated with it. I love the bringing art to the community. My only concern is that it's art that actually focuses on Silverton and Silverton heritage. That's what I really want to see, and I'm very excited about this. So I'm 2 thumbs up, full steam ahead.
All right, great. Well, that's what we needed. Thank you.
Great, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I look forward to working with you.
That's it for
All
our
right,
day.
That's a quick one.
sweet.
That's one. Time is 5:06 and we can adjourn this mini meeting. All right.
Bye, Jim.
Thank you all.
Bye, guys. I'll see you later. At least I'll be at the planning commission in a bit.
I'll see you at the planning commission.